The night shift starts at midnight. Ahmed clicks his flashlight on, and the beam cuts through a silence so complete it feels like a crime scene. He's walking through downtown Lusail, what was supposed to be the smartest city in the Middle East, and his footsteps echo off glass towers where no one lives. 50 stories of emptiness, stretching into the desert sky. He passes a luxury mall with its doors still locked, 4 years after the World Cup ended. The fountains are dry. The air conditioning in the empty offices runs on a timer, cooling rooms that have never been occupied. Ahmed isn't just a security guard, he's one of the men who built this place, and now he's paid to watch it die. This is the story of how Qatar built a $45 billion ghost town. The vision was seductive. Lusail was marketed as the city of the future, a sustainable, walkable metropolis that would house 250,000 people. It had a sleek metro line, marinas for yachts, and the crown jewel, the Lusail iconic stadium, where Lionel Messi lifted the World Cup trophy in front of 1 billion viewers. For one night, the city performed perfectly. The lights shimmered, the crowds cheered, and then everyone left. But the real story isn't in the architecture. It's in the fingerprints buried in the concrete. To build Lusail, Qatar imported more than 2 million workers from Nepal, Bangladesh, and India. These weren't just laborers. They were people trapped in a system called kafala. Your employer owns your visa. Your employer holds your passport. You can't quit. You can't leave. One worker told me he paid a recruiter $3,000 to get here, a debt he's still paying off 4 years later. Another described the heat, 50 degrees Celsius, 120 degrees Fahrenheit, working 14-hour shifts without water breaks. The official death toll is disputed. Human rights groups estimate thousands died from heat stroke, heart failure, and workplace accidents. But here's what's never in the official reports: the bodies that were shipped home with natural causes on the certificate, the families who never got compensation, the men who collapsed on the exact sidewalks Ahmed now patrols alone. I spoke to a journalist who investigated the labor camps. 24 men packed into shipping containers, no air conditioning, toilets overflowing. They built luxury apartments they could never afford to live in. One worker sent me a photo of his pay stub, $250 a month. The monthly rent for a 1-bedroom in Lusail? $2,000. The cruelty isn't just in the conditions, it's in the math. You see, Lusail was never really a city, it was a real estate speculation disguised as national pride. Qatar's ruling family, through a state-owned company, owned the land. They sold development rights to investors, mostly other royal family members and foreign speculators, who flipped properties before a single building was finished. The World Cup was the deadline that forced the bubble to inflate. The stadium was the commercial, but there was never a plan for who would actually live here. Qataris have free housing and generous benefits. They don't need to buy a $500,000 apartment in a concrete suburb. Expats, the backbone of Qatar's workforce, can't afford it, so the towers sit empty. I tracked down a real estate agent who worked the Lusail market during the boom. She described showroom apartments with marble countertops and smart home systems, all sold to buyers who never visited investors in London, and Dubai bought 10 units at a time, sight unseen. After the World Cup, the speculators tried to sell, but there were no actual residents. Prices collapsed. Entire floors went into default. The agent told me she stopped answering calls because there was nothing to say. The city was a mirage. And yet the lights are still on. The metro still runs, mostly empty. The fountains still cycle through their programmed routines, shooting water into the air for no one. It costs millions to maintain a ghost town. Why? Because admitting it's empty would be admitting the whole system was a lie. So they keep it on life support. This is where the story turns, because the men who built Lusail are still here. Ahmed, the security guard, still lives in a labor camp on the city's edge. He can't go home because his employer hasn't paid his final wages. He's trapped in the very city he helped create, guarding it from himself. He told me he sometimes walks through the empty marina at dawn, past the yachts that never sail, and feels like he's haunting his own life. There's a word for this: ghost urbanism. Cities built not for people, but for capital flows. Lusail isn't unique. China has dozens of empty megacities, but Qatar's version is darker because it was built by modern slaves for a global audience that cheered it on. When Messi lifted that trophy, we were all watching in a stadium paid for with debt bondage and death. The cameras didn't show the workers in the shadows, they showed the fireworks, and now those workers are ghosts too. A few months ago, I got a message from a man who'd been a crane operator on the stadium. He'd finally made it home to Bangladesh, after 5 years. He sent me a photo of his bedroom. On the wall, he'd hung a picture of Lusail at night, all lit up, like a promise. He told me he looks at it sometimes and feels proud. Then he remembers the friend who fell from the 30th floor, the friend whose body was sent home in a wooden box and whose family got nothing. The picture is a lie, but it's the only thing he has left. Lusail taught me something about progress. We think the future is built by visionaries and architects, but mostly it's built by people who have no choice. And when the future arrives, if it ever does, it belongs to people who never earned it. The rest are left walking empty streets at midnight, guarding a dream they were never allowed to have. The next time you see a skyline glittering in the desert, ask yourself, who turned on those lights? And who's paying the bill? Ahmed clocks out at 6 a.m. The sun rises over the towers, turning the glass gold. For a moment, it almost looks alive. Then the light hits the empty windows, and you can see straight through to the other side. Nothing there. Never was.